Good morning to everyone. Under the course name Aircraft Production Technology, the Unit 1 Casting and Welding, we are going to discuss about the topic 2 sand casting. So, why we need a casting is nothing but to produce some metal or manufacture some metal. Manufacturing is a Latin word. Manufactus means made by hand. In modern context, it involves making products from raw materials by using various processes by making use of hand tools, machinery or even computers. Under this condition, we are going to produce a raw material which is going to be in a molten state or liquid state, and it going to convert it into a desired part or desired shape. So, and the process of manufacturing, there are many process. For example, casting process, sand casting, die casting. In the forming process, there are rolling, extrusion. In fabrication process, welding, riveting, and material removal process, there are drilling and turning, etc. So, next we are going to discuss about casting. So, what is meant by casting or metal casting? Casting is normally called as metal casting. So, what is meant by casting is converting a molten or a plastic raw material. Converting a molten or a plastic raw material into a finished product is called as a casting. So, what is meant by sand casting is nothing but we are going to carry out a casting process with the help of sand, that is called sand casting. Commonly, so under this topic we are going to cover a certain objective. The first one is to understand the outline of casting and its process, and the second one is to understand the difference between pattern and casting, and the third one how to select a pattern material, how to select a good pattern material or suitable pattern material, and the fourth one is to understand the various types of pattern and their application, how can we use them. So, next we are going to discuss a principle of sand casting. Commonly a casting, whether it is a sand casting or die casting, there is a common terminologies or principles we are going to use in a casting process in irrespective of their method. Whether it is sand casting or die casting, there are certain methods. The first one is preparing a mold and preparing a molten metal, and the next one is we are going to introduce a molten metal into a mold, and after solidification we are going to remove a molten metal from the mold, whether by its breaking or breaking or removing a mold. So, in principle, in particularly in sand casting, the first principle of in the sand casting, the principle of sand casting is very simple. The molten metal is poured into a cavity, as we discussed in above topic. The main principle is you are going to introduce a molten metal in a volume of packed sand. The volume of packed sand, this is the there will be a box like structure where we are going to fill it with sand. In center we are going to place a mold. The cavity have been produced by first packing the sand around a pattern, and then the next, when cooled, the metal cast is broken out of the sand. It is very simple. As a short GIF image, you can understand very well the principle of sand casting. So, we can discuss briefly how the sand casting process is carried out. So, the first one is, you can see that the slide of second box are placed on the top of base. The base we are going to keep a box where we are going to fill a sand. This is just like a boundary layer. You can imagine how we are going to store a water. The same way we are going to dump a sand in a constrained manner. You can see the second GIF image. The casting sand should be with which should not have any contaminants. So, we are going to take a pure sand by by using any methods of purifying sand. And the third one, we are going to stelling the bar using a rod. We are going to level the stand with the top of drag. We are till the top of box. We are going to level the stand tightly, and we are going to place it with a tight pack. Tightly we are going to place it. Next, we are going to the pattern. We are going to place a pattern letter A. You can see that letter pattern A. You can see clearly. We are going to keep a pattern on the middle part of the sand. So, then next we are going to remove the pattern carefully from the sun. You can notice the impact of a pattern in a sand. It resembles like a A. It's a A pattern. We can see it very clearly. The next is how we are going to mold a metal, whether it is any metal. Commonly aluminum will be used in a large number in sand casting. You can see that animation video that aluminum pieces are going to they are converted into a molten metal. Next, the molten aluminum is carefully poured into a mold. The molten aluminum will be carefully poured into a mold. There will be so many allowances which are allowed to be cooled. So, detailedly for we clean understand, you can see this picture. The one half of the pattern, and the next one is a flask placed above the first pattern and the sand is filled, and the next one is other half of pattern. This is another method. Another half of pattern, the flask placed over second pattern, the another half of the mold. You can see very well the two views of the pattern. This next one we are going to connect the two pattern. You can assemble the mold, you can see there, and through the assembled mold we are going to pour a molten metal, the casting through the gating system. There will be a gate valve. Through that gate valve you can pour a molten metal, so that the molten metal reaches the cavity very carefully, and the solidified metal casting, the solidified metal will be in the shape of a mold or required shape. So, this is the basic principle of sand casting. I think you will very well understand how easily the materials can be made by using sand casting. So, as we see, why we need to choose a very sand casting in a large number is these sand casting have very large number of merits. It is very simple and inexpensive. Any materials like ferrous and non-ferrous can be made. Intricate shapes can be made. Usually the very difficult or complex designs are usually made by sand casting, because when we go for a turning or any other casting, any other methods, the minute or complex shapes are difficult to produce, so that sand casting is chosen, and any size and weight up to 200 tons can be made using sand casting. So, these are some merits and advantages. You can see that ability to fabricate large components, the capacity of both, as we discussed, the capacity of casting is both ferrous and non-ferrous materials can be made. The cost of production is very low. So, application, when we see where the sand casting is applicated or where they are going to where they are largely used, the first one is air compressor pistons, bearings, blowers and impellers, electronic equipment, engine crankcases, engine oil pans, etc. These are very large area where the sand casting process is involved. So, particularly in our field, where in aeroplane there are many parts, in particularly in aircraft where the sand casting is used, through which sand casting, what are the parts are manufactured. The first you can see the compressor wheel, A image, you can see the compressor wheel is made out of sand casting, and the second one is impeller with a twisted blade. You can see that impeller, the twisted blade design is very complex and we can't produce by using a normal traditional method. So, we are going for a sand casting for accuracy. And the third one is compressor uppercase for air conditioning system. This is a compressor uppercase where in air conditioning system in aircraft they are using. And the second one is Eurocopter antenna support. It's a support Eurocopter antenna support. These also going to this is manufactured under sand casting. And the second one is air bus window frame. And the fourth one is door step fitting, and n number of casting product, n number of materials are casted by sand casting process. This is a certain example just for your reference, and you can go to internet and browse. You can see various number of products are involved in sand casting process. So, under sand casting process we should understand certain properties of sand. The sand, we can't use any number of sand, or we can't use any sand. Sand should have a certain properties. The ingredients of moldings are 80 to 90%. It should have a silica, and sand grains 5 to 20% clay, and a moisture should have a 2 to 5%, and the oxides of iron, potash, limestone, magnesium and soda. These are the components of a molding sand. A molding sand has certain properties, and if a molding properties are not having certain qualities, the desired property, desired shape or desired accuracy we can't produce in a sand casting. So, there are a molding, there is a testing, there are various testing method to test whether the molding sand is fit for a sand casting. Grain fitness test, moisture content test, clay content test, there are a large number of tests available to understand the properties of sand. Next, coming to pattern. So, there is a difference between pattern and casting. We should not get confused whether what is casting and what is pattern. Pattern is used for performing a impression or forming a impact on a material. For example, you can see the fifth, the pattern is carefully removed. The pattern is placed, is only the purpose of pattern is only to produce a impression of a material. You can see the fifth image carefully, you can see that this is a role of the pattern. So, as we discussed, pattern materials, what are the material can be used for pattern? The first one is wood. The most commonly in the olden days they have been used wood. The mostly common used material excuse me, pattern material is wood. The main reason is being the easy availability, low weight, and it can easily shaped and shaped, and it can be shaped into a desired shape. And the second one is metal. Metal patterns are extensively for casting because of their strength, accuracy, good dimensional stability, durability and smooth surface. Many materials such as cast iron, brass, aluminum, etc., they can be used as a pattern materials. And plastics also they are used as a pattern material. There is also this is also used as a pattern material because of their low weight, easier formability, good dimensional stability, smooth surface and durability. The example is epoxy resin. And as we know that for making statue, especially for making a statue, the waxes are used. The excellent material for investment casting is a wax, because of which good surface finish, high tensile strength and hardness. Waxes example are paraffin wax, bee wax, etc. So, if you go for a when you go for a browsing, you can search for various pattern shapes, and if you go for a foundry in our college, foundry lab in a college, we can you can understand clearly what is sand casting. I believe that you can you understand what is sand casting and it merits. We will continue with the following casting process. Thank you.